be joining us through LinkedIn and Facebook pages. I think they have already started joining. And whatever questions they're going to have or give, I'll let you know, but keeping in mind the time frame that we have. Okay, so we're live now. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kritika Gayatri, a digital journalist at Observe Now. Observe Now is a young digital media startup that caters knowledge-based stories that are typically not covered by the mainstream media. The most important key figures of global advertising market that I'm going to put forward today are the corresponding statistics that we have. The total global media owner advertising revenue sums up to around $649.22 billion US dollars. According to PwC's latest report, it reveals that India's entertainment and media industry is expected to grow at 10.75% to reach rupees 4,12,656 crore by the year 2025. One of the fastest growing industries in India is set to expand to almost 24,213 crores in the year 2025. And to decode this segment further, today we have with us Mr. Suvir Bajaj, who is the co-founder at Foxymoron and Zoom Media. Foxymoron is a leading independent digital products and services agency. They have built several sustainable partnerships with L'Oreal Group, Netflix, Colgate, Amazon India, Burger King, Gillette, and many more amongst others. So welcome, Mr. Suvir.
Thank you so much for having me, Kritika. It's a pleasure. Good afternoon to you and to all our viewers.
Thank you so much for sparing time for us. Before we dig into this journey, I would love to know about your journey at Foxymoron. Please walk us through your journey.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to share the story with you, Kritika. So we started our journey back in 2008 when, in fact, Pratik and I were very much still in college. We had finished the second year of our bachelor's in management sciences and were resisting to do yet another internship. And from the resistance to do an internship, the idea to birth Foxymoron was born. We started with a small little office with a few freelance projects that we picked up over the summer and organically managed to scale the business quite steadily and actively to a team of about 60 or 70 people in Bombay. In about 2012, we opened our offices in Delhi and 2015 in Bangalore. And today we stand at a team of about 300 odd people across Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore. And the agency sits at the intersection of content, media, data, and technology. We're an integrated digital agency that caters to clients that have young audiences on the internet. And we're category and sector agnostic, and we cater to all the lovely brands that you just mentioned in the introduction.
So what was the idea and inspiration behind this venture that you started?
So to be honest, it was the summer of 2008 and we were 19-year-old kids and we were planning to go to Goa in the summer like most teenagers do and hang out. And we had saved some money to go to Goa from our previous internships. And we were sitting at home and we were chatting about what to do that summer. And, and Pratik said to me, why don't we not do an internship and do something of our own? So I said, okay, cool. Whatever money we make doing something on our own, let's just split it. And then the Cindy and me made us register a partnership firm. So I wrote this partnership deed and we made some money. And the money that we had saved to go to Goa, we used to invest in our little startup. And we registered this firm called Foxymoron on the name was born on the 23rd of March. And this name went really viral. And at that time, there was no real concept of digital advertising and marketing. So the fact that we were doing digital automatically meant that we were suddenly in everyone's radar and everyone wanted to know what we were doing. So we got meetings with all the right people. We got all our friends to come and intern for us. So we had a pseudo team going up and running in the first year. And we thought that we could make waves in a category that didn't really exist, which was digital marketing.
Right. I actually wanted to know the idea behind the name Foxymoron because it is actually very intriguing to read this name. So what does this mean actually?
That's right. Our brief to ourselves, of course, was that we want to name ourselves something that when you read this name or when you hear this name, you remember it and you ask yourself, hey, who are these guys? What do they do? So Foxymoron is actually born from the word oxymoron, and an oxymoron is a contradiction, like pretty ugly. And Foxymoron is also an oxymoron because a fox is witty and a moron is, well, kind of funny, right? Like silly and funny and has some fun. So, with the youth that enters this advertising workspace, we want to be witty and we also want to, live our youthful and fun sides. And it's kind of a contradiction saying that, look, you don't need silver hair and 40 years of experience to build a brand. You can be young and energetic and passionate and be a digital native and still build brands.
Absolutely. So, what changes have you made in the marketing approach and strategies to adapt to the virtual world after the pandemic hit? We are all aware of how drastically things actually changed after the pandemic. So, what were your strategies at Foxymoron to cope up with that?
So internally, of course, it was relatively easy for us to pivot to becoming a virtual and digital organization because we're anyway a digital organization natively, and we're very, very early adopters when it comes to a lot of digitization and operational tech. But I think the real challenge for us was actually in our approach and strategy towards our clients. And that was the main difference, because a lot of our clients, a lot of the ones that you mentioned right now, like Burger King and like Kellogg's and Colgate and Cash, they all had like very heavy offline dependencies in terms of their consumer touch points and retail, which were heavy channels for them. And then digitization of these categories became quite a challenge. I think the big change that we were forced to make early on last year when we went into the pandemic was we spent the entire summer actually educating our customers on the basis of digitizing the operations of their company. I think everyone understands the importance of digitizing marketing when it comes to branding, awareness, video communications, customer acquisition. But when it comes to digitizing operations, how you communicate with your teams, how you manage employees, how you build productivity, how you build efficiency, how you keep people motivated. And I think that was a massive learning curve, because obviously younger people are more acquainted with this digital way of working. But when it comes to the older generation, a lot of them even struggled when it came to just starting and stopping a Zoom call. A lot of them didn't even know how to share their screens and record, now things that we take for granted. But a year ago, these are things that we didn't take for granted. And it became very important that we start opening people's mindsets to start thinking digitally first before they adopt digital technology, because all of these things require an investment. And you only invest in something when you believe in it, when you have belief that it'll work and it'll add value to your life and help you and your teams. So I think, we've been very strong custodians of digital literacy and digital advocacy, saying you have to educate people around you, get them to buy into the larger story, and that's when they'll partner with you. That's when they'll befriend you and invest in your solutions.
I completely agree with the point that you mentioned, that at least the younger generation was aware of how to, execute the technology, as simple as the Zoom meetings that we have or the Teams meetings that we have. Yeah, right. So moving ahead, do you think there's a place for traditional advertising now in the future left? If so, in which scenarios or for which businesses?
Definitely, I think there'll always be a place for all kinds of marketing. I'm a firm believer of the fact that when it comes to advertising and marketing, what we have done is we've only changed the medium and the platform, right? The thesis of advertising, which is understanding the customer, understanding the insight, building a great message, all of that remains the same. The only thing we've done is we've changed the medium to digital. So I definitely think traditional advertising will stand. I mean, if you look at television, which is the largest medium today, television reaches over 750 million people in India already today, right? And I don't think that's going to die. While digital, of course, does cannibalize its market share in a very big way, I don't think that's going to die. Today, digital still has low penetration when it comes to tier 2 and tier 3. Tier 2 and tier 3 are still very dependent on print, on television. They're still very dependent on radio, right? We're talking about the adoption of handsets and mobile phones. Everyone has a mobile phone today, but everyone doesn't have a smartphone today. The internet penetration is only at 696 million people today. We've still got half the population that still needs to digitize. So there's a very large case for why traditional advertising will still exist. And also, we as organized advertisers, organized marketers, we sit inside a very corporate ecosystem. There's a whole unregulated and unorganized ecosystem of marketing that's very dependent on peer-to-peer marketing that happens offline. Brands that are non-corporatized, brands that are regional in nature, local in nature, rural in nature, they're very heavily dependent on traditional forms of advertising, may advertise in local newspapers, may do the equivalent of local outdoor advertising, painting on houses, bus stops, bus shelters, etc., which all form a very large chunk of traditional advertising, whether it's in the organized or in the unorganized space. So I definitely think digital will catch up. Like you said, 25,000 crores, we'll hit 30 to 35% in maturity. Right. But traditional isn't going anywhere. We're all going to work in one, we're going to work in one, very cohesive ecosystem, coupling, with one another and aiding one another.
Yeah, taking up the point of that, there's a big chunk of population that is working in the unorganized sector. So the traditional marketing and advertising is not going anywhere. That Absolutely. Is I've taken up from you, Samir, today. So how have you been hands-on in your current role in the past and in present, along with the changes due to the pandemic?
Oh, so I mean, historically for us, we started as an unfunded startup. Like I said, Pratik and I were 19, so very very closely knit founder-driven startup. And in founder-driven startups, as you're aware, of course, the founders are very hands-on involved when it comes to all functions, whether it's sales or marketing or operations or execution of campaigns, creative. Because we're founder-driven, of course, over a period of time, we've built an excellent leadership team for ourselves across all verticals and across all markets. Nevertheless, a lot of growth is still accelerated by both Pratik and me. Pratik, my partner, for our viewers that are not familiar with. So Pratik works on a lot of business acquisition, business development with new customers. I work with teams on enhancing products and services. Now, of course, during the pandemic, we've not had the privilege of working with our teams face to face, and we've been doing this virtually. And I think, across the board, it's become very important for leadership at all levels, not just founders, but leadership at all levels, to be connected with their teams so that A, we have a pulse of our organization, and B, we can keep people really motivated. And I think, over the last year and a half, because times have been personally so troubling for a lot of us, it's important that leadership stays connected with people to really have a pulse of the organization and keep them motivated. And even if it's just quick 15-30 minute catch-ups with the team, going through task lists, JSRs, progress updates, reports, having some kind of connectivity with the team ensures that you're hands-on with what's happening on a day-to-day basis, and you keep your team adequately motivated, which I really think is the need of the hour for the rest of this year.
Absolutely. Even when we are virtual, we have to stay in contact. The virtual contact through conferences and meetings. Very well said, Sudhir. So this is actually the last question for your journey at Foxy Moron. So what career advice would you give to new college graduates who are interested in working in marketing and media? And as you are the co-founder, youth at the age of 21 and 22, they want to become founders, co-founders, and CEOs. So any advice for them?
Absolutely. I think, the most popular question I get asked by kids who are graduating from college, and like you said, a lot of, the whole startup ecosystem promotes young people to become founders. And the most popular question I get from college kids is, what is the right time for me to start my own business? How many years of experience should I have gotten? How many jobs should I have run? And I keep saying that the right time to have started your business was yesterday. The fact that you're asking this question already means that you're ready. There is no right time or there is no wrong time. You're going to make the same mistakes whether you started in 2020 or in 22. You're going to have to go through the same learning curve. You're going to have to go through the same journey. You're going to have the same difficult conversations that you have to. So the fact that you're having this conversation with me means you've had the conversation with yourself, means you're ready. Just dive in. And the best way to learn is by diving in. So if you think you're ready, just dive in. Don't overthink things. Just trust your gut and go with the flow.
Zavir, don't you think there needs to be a market research before jumping in?
So the fact that you've thought about being a founder means you've done the market research, right? You validated a market opportunity. There's one thing that's passion, right? And you have to be really passionate about a founder. They say that good founders are a combination of thinkers and doers, right? So the fact that you're having the conversation with a third party means you've already had the conversation with yourself. Means you've gone over the pros, the cons, you've gone over the opportunity, you've gone over, the sacrifices that you'll have to make. You've had all these conversations with yourself. That's when you start having them with someone else. And also, what is market research? Market research is a fancy word for doing what we do anyway. Everyone spends 2 hours of their day scrolling, thumb stopping on the internet, going through interesting pieces of content, going through articles, watching interviews such as this. This is market research, isn't it? Right? And we're anyway doing this.
Absolutely. But any advice for youngsters, like how to do that market research if they want to dive in? Any small tips for them?
So something that I learned pretty late on in my life, well, not too late on, I'm only 33. I've not crossed over to the other side just yet. I still have all my hair and it's all black. Is I think, what all youngsters should do in the professional setting is get a mentor early on in life. It's very, very important to get a mentor early on in life because you need someone in your corner who's always going to be batting for you, no strings attached. A lot of people lean on their first bosses as their mentor, which is great because your boss will always look out for you no matter what. And I think that's very, very important that you have someone batting in your corner, no strings attached, not a mother or father, a professional mentor who's going to guide you through your journey, who you look up to and respect and is always going to be in your corner no matter what.
I think our audience has got the right advice to the, right now. So moving ahead, this is going to be a rapid fire round, very quick, very light, just to lighten the tone of the interview that we have. So shall we begin, Mr. Suvir?
Ready when you are.
Yes. First question that you have is Mr. Suvir Bajaj in one word.
Tall.
Sorry?
Tall.
Okay. Next, what is a secret talent that no one knows about?
I'm a Western classically trained singer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Even I just found out that in my research.
That's why it's a secret that no one knows.
Exactly, but now everybody was going to know that.
Yeah.
What are you reading or listening to right now?
I'm reading this lovely book called Anti-Fragile, and I'm listening to the best of Oscar Peterson. I love jazz music.
Great. So which words or phrases do you most overuse?
This is something that most people make fun of me. I think the phrase that I use most often is low-hanging fruit.
And why?
Well, I believe that, there are a plethora of opportunities that present themselves, and there are obviously opportunities that are easier to overcome than, those that are slightly more, future facing. And when there are opportunities that are easy to kind of, approach, I refer to them as low hanging fruit. And I always like to take advantage of the low hanging fruit so that you get early wins in life and in your career before you start look at future facing goals, 5 or 10 years in the future.
I have heard of this phrase for the very first time, and I think I'm going to use this in future now.
I'm glad.
Okay, so if we have to automate you and ask you to keep one human quality, what should that be?
Empathy.
Okay, and your latest round of funding at Foxymoron?
We're a completely self-funded organization. We have no outside investment. We have no debt. We're very, very proudly independent, self-funded, self-growth, and self-grooming ourselves since 2008.
Great. Selling tip for young entrepreneurs.
I think, most entrepreneurs, when they're young, they try to use a lot of flowery language and mumbo jumbo. They try to make the other person who they are pitching to, they try to tell them what the other guy wants to hear, as opposed to tell them what they really want to, convey themselves. A lot of people don't stand their own ground. When they are challenged on the merits of their case, they very often buckle and say, yes, you must be right. There's absolutely no harm in saying, I don't know something. There's absolutely no harm in sticking to your stance and really relaying and really pushing through your agenda. People will respect you for it. They may not agree, but don't tell somebody else what they want to hear. Stick to your story, stick to your narrative. People will really respect you for it. If you don't know something, don't bullshit your way through. Please say, I'm sorry, I don't know. I will find out and come later. The more you bullshit your way through, people are smart, right? People see through the bullshit. They'll always find out, and they won't respect you anymore.
Absolutely. So, Suvir, this is the last question of the rapid fire round. So how many women do you have in the top management or the decision-making team? And if I can get the number of their representation at Foxymoron?
Absolutely. We have at all points of time, actually, over the course of maybe the last 7 odd years since we built a management committee structure for ourselves, we've had an equal representation of men and women. In fact, the first client that you took the name of when you read out our client list was L'Oreal.
Right.
We served as L'Oreal's agency for 11 years since 2009, excuse me. And while we served as L'Oreal's agency, it was really funny because the agency was run by Pratik and me and boys on the co-founder group, but L'Oreal was the client that really launched us. And in fact, the entire leadership team of women was responsible for really making the agency who it is today. Every agency has one client that makes who it is today. For us, it was L'Oreal over the period of the last 10 or 11 years. And it was this very strong group of women today that made us who we are today. The lady we're grooming to become the CEO of Foxymoron is a lady. HR is head by a lady. Our influencer talent and management division is head by a lady. Our creative director and our production house is a lady. I think we have a 50% representation of women across the board in all offices. Our Delhi office is headed by a lady. So amongst 3 offices, 1 is headed by a woman. We have a very, very healthy representation of both men and women, and we have a very inclusive and diverse workplace. We really encourage inclusivity and diversity across the board, and we're quite gender agnostic in that context as well. We don't necessarily, look at gender from the perspective, prioritize gender from the perspective
Right.
of hiring for any roles. In fact, some of our most quote unquote masculine roles when it comes to auto and sports, etc., all driven by women, and we don't really pick roles on the basis of gender when it comes to assignment.
Absolutely, Suvir, and I think it is very imperative to have such conversations and with the founders who believe in such flexibility. And with this, I would also like to mention that we at Observe now, we are 80% women, and we're headed by a founder who is a male. So I think there's a kind of similarity that we share. And as you said, we don't, really focus on a particular gender, but that is what happens when we go for the roles and we just pick. Yes, before we end this session, I would request you, as you told us about your secret talents, so can you do once?
Sorry, say that again.
Can we hear out something that you can present?
Can you hear something? You want me to sing for you? I shouldn't have said that. I should have maybe said that. I was not prepared for this. Okay, let me try. Let me sing something for you. I won't sing something classical because I feel that might bore our listeners and put them to sleep. And since it's anyway 2:50 in the afternoon and people have sure eaten a nice heavy Indian lunch. Okay, sure. Let me open up the lyrics of a song so I have something in front of me and I don't.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sending you a nice fat bill for this if you don't mind. So I'm going to sing a song by John Denver. I'm sure everyone knows who John Denver is, no introduction there. And the song is called Perhaps Love. I'm going to, if you don't mind, just, look at the lyrics. So I'm adequately
Yes, absolutely.
Perhaps love is like a resting place, a shelter from the storm. It exists to give you comfort. It is there to keep you warm. And in those times of trouble, when you are most alone, the memories of love will bring you home. I hope that was clear on my little mic.
Yes, absolutely. The memories of love will bring you home. And as I always say, that love shall win above all. Thank you so much, Suvir, for singing this for me, for the audience, for the people that we have right now. Thank you so much. I love this conversation. Very exciting, very energizing. But before we close this interview, your parting words for our audience.
I think, usually the last question that I get answered is, okay, so parting words for the audience. Kritika, we spoke about something previously before we started the interview. Very difficult times that we're going through now around the world. Obviously, we're getting through the pandemic. We're seeing what's happened in Afghanistan. I think, my biggest learning over the course of the last 1.5 years while we've been going through this pandemic, and, a lot of people over the course of the last 1.5 years have always at different points of time in their lives, at different points of time in this pandemic, may have felt that we have a lot of these struggles and these battles and we go through a lot of these challenges alone. I know this as young founders that we work with all the time. They always believe that, they have all these challenges and these problems and they have to go through them alone. But I think that over the course of the last 1.5 years, the one lesson that we've really learned is that our society continues and has a sense of continuity because of the concept of society. We function, we coexist collaboratively together. We're all in this together. We have to lean on each other's shoulders. There's absolutely no harm in looking left or right at the guy or the girl sitting next to you and asking for help, asking for a handout. We're in this world together, in this life together, in this society together. Man is a social animal. We're going to get through this situation together. You may have a good day today and I may not, and it may be vice versa tomorrow, but there's absolutely no harm for us to lean on each other, take each other's support, because we're in this together. We're going to get through this together. So we just got to stay strong, whether it's for ourselves today, our families tomorrow, for Afghanistan the day after, for the rest of the world, the day after. We just need to stay strong and get through this together. So we should keep our heads down and power through.
Absolutely. So we are in this together. It doesn't matter what matter we are into and what situation we are having in hand. Thank you so much for sparing time for this interview. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation, not just about the startup that we have, but the song that you sang and the advice and the words that you had for our audience. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck for your future endeavors and for other things that you're planning to start with. Thank you for raising awareness too, and I'm really looking forward to have many more such insightful discussions in the future. Thank you to our audience for joining us. To get more updates about these startup life stories, do follow us on our social media platforms. With this, I'm signing off.
Thanks, Kritika. Thanks for having me.
And please be kind to each other. Bye. Thank you, Suvir.
Thanks. Bye-bye.